Okay, so hi everyone. So this is the last presentation. So I'm Guillaume Delberg. I'm a PhD student at IMS Bordeaux, a French laboratory with a company called GreenTalks. So I will present a different solution to build open source heterogeneous AMP virtual platform using the System C and the TLM standard. Okay, here is the plan. So first of all, I will first introduce the System C standard for people who don't know the standard. Then I will talk about TLM, which is a System C extension. And then I will try to explain what the interest of virtual platform, why we need virtual platform, and how to build virtual platform with System C and TLM standard. Finally, I will go further, explain what we have around the System C standard community, and conclude. Okay. So what System C? So System C is a language allowing hardware description. We can see that as a HDL language. It's based on the C++ language. So it's a NIS3A standard, the 1666. The last revision is the 2011. So on top of the C++ language, System C add a notion of time. So basically you have a simulation kernel. It's event-based. You will describe your module, and you have a notion of simulation time. You have the notion of concurrency. You have your hardware data types, as you have with the VHDL. So you have your bit vector, etc. You have the same with the System C library. You can define your module from a different abstraction level, from RTL to untimed functional level. So from System C and also with TLM. I will go back later. So you can finally describe a complete hardware description with System C, a system, a network of systems, and cards. So we can split the language in different parts. So you have with the blue part, you have the System C part. So on the left, you have the structural elements, which are your module. So like with the VHDL. So and you have port. Port is element you will use to interconnect all your System C module. Then you have channels. Channels are used to interconnect your modules. So it's what you put between your different modules. Utilities, you have the data types, as I just mentioned in the previous slides. So you have your bit vector, your floating point elements, and it's of course an event-driven simulation, so based on events. So with System C, you can check the accuracy of your expected behavior. You can analyze and optimize the performances, etc., etc. So it's really a language for system-level modeling. So around System C, there is today an ecosystem. System C is a standard. It's not really a new standard. It's more than 10 years. Meaning we have an ecosystem inside some company and between company. So you have, for example, in big company, some people modeling some part of the hardware with System C, and they can easily interconnect their model because they use a System C standard. And then we have people trying to build, for example, a new platform using a model from different companies. And as all companies use the System C standards, they can easily interconnect their model without having to build a bridge between the custom interface with their model. So what's really important is really to use the open approach, to use the open standard, to be able to easily interconnect model with other. We don't want to have to build a bridge each time we want to interconnect models. So here is a really, really simple code. It's just an AND gate. So you just have to include just on the top the System C library headers. Then you declare your module. So it's just a macro. So you have the definition in the yellow bubble. It is just a C++ class. Then you have your port. You have your AB, which are the inputs of the AND gate. You have the Q, which is the output. then the constructor as a C++ constructor, and you declare what we call a process in systemc. So in systemc, we have a thread and a method. So the difference between both is that with a method, when the simulation will start, the method will be executed only when a sensitive element will be triggered. So in this case, we can see the element sensitive are A and B. With SC thread, when the simulation will start, the thread will directly start. So in this case, you can see we have an SC method called doEnd and doing the end of the AND gate. So, simple. Okay, so how it works. So a lot of people say, oh, okay, systemc is really slow. Yes, true. Okay, so in the bottom left, we have an example of the instantiation of the AND gate. So basically, we just instantiate it as a C++ object. And then we bind all different modules with the port they export through channels. And we start the simulation. So you can see the execution of systemc on the graph. So you start SC main, which will then start call SC start, which starts the simulation. It will call all end of elaboration if you have function on your modules. And then we have the big loop part. So you need to know in systemc, all threads are serialized, meaning your process will not run in parallel on your machine. Even if you run 10 modules with 10 threads, they will run each one after the other. That's a big issue with systemc. It means during what we call a data cycle, the systemc will give the end to a first thread, to a first process, a runnable process, and after a call to wait or a notification to an event, as systemc is a systemc event-based simulation, it will pass the end to another thread. And then the systemc kernel will move between different processes. When more processes are runnable, but time needs to move in the simulation time, it will advance the time. And when nothing more is runnable, it will just exit the simulation. Okay, so here is just a really simple example to interconnect two systemc modules. So we have just a transmitter, we have a receiver, and between both we have a channel, so it's just a FIFO. All class prefixed with SC are standard systemc class. You need to know with channel, you need to know they are slow. Why? Because when the transmitter will write to the FIFO, so to the SC FIFO out, which is a port, an SC port, it will do a first data copy. Then you will run a data cycle, so it will go back to the systemc kernel, then run into the channel. The FIFO will do the job. Okay, now the channel we want to send the data to the receiver. Okay, it will do another data cycle, so another data copy. It's really slow. It requires multiple data cycles, and it implies multiple data copy. So we need something faster and better. So something happening later after the first version of systemc standard, which is TLM for transaction level modeling. It's an extension of TLM. So basically, the idea is to abstract more the communication between different modules, so through a transaction. So what's a transaction? So a transaction will include what we call a payload. So for example, you have a transaction between a CPU and a memory. So you will pass your data, your address, and maybe some specific thing to your transaction, everything in a single transaction. You will not send byte by byte your data, but all your data in a single transaction. And this transaction will pass directly with a function call, so you will not have data copy as you have with channels. So TLM 2.0 also improves the interoperability between memory mapped bus models as the payload, meaning the transaction you pass between each models, is standardized. The payload contains standard data, like standard field, the address, the data, etc. It's available in the standard. And then the last part, it's the notion of quantum time. So I will go back later. I will give you a really example to better understand. But the idea is to allow models to run ahead of time, ahead of systemc time, to avoid the synchronization with the systemc kernel. Okay, so here you have just a sum up of different abstraction levels. So you can describe with systemc at RTL level and cycle accurate. And then you can describe with a higher abstraction level at AT and LT. So what we call LT is loosely time. So it's mostly for blocking transaction. And AT, it's for non-blocking transaction. It's a little bit more accurate, but a little bit more slow, because it requires one synchronization with the systemc kernel. Okay, so I said TLM 2.0, but what about TLM 1.0? So just remember, so systemc starts as an HDA language. The idea with TLM 1.0 was also to standardize how to interconnect HDL, but with transaction. But it was still with channels, so still with data copy. So that's not really what people wanted to do, because if you want, for example, to develop your software on with your virtual platform with your model, maybe you don't need the accuracy you have with a cycle accurate. You just want maybe to abstract as much as possible, while the interface are the same. So they want something faster. So TLM 2.0 was an attempt to model interconnect. So and it was specifically for virtual platform, and with no and or less data copy. So here is just an example. So you still have a notion of port. It's what you say. It's what you have between around each module to interconnect to channel. So with TLM, it's what we call a socket. So you have a notion of initiator and target. So an initiator will initiate a transaction, and a target will receive a transaction. So on the top right corner, you have the prototype, not really the prototype, the arguments of the btransport method. So the initiator will instantiate a blocking transport transaction to the target, will send what we call the generic payload containing your transaction, your data, your address, and with a delay, and maybe a delay. So there is also a notion of a direct memory pointer. So just to give you an example, you have a CPU calling with communicating with a memory, and the CPU will read a big part of the memory. Maybe you don't want the CPU to send a lot of transactions between your initiator, so the CPU and your memory. Instead, it will directly ask the direct memory pointer. It means the host address of the memory you are modeling. So the initiator can directly use this address to take the parts they want directly from the memory you are modeling. So you don't have you just have to get the direct memory pointer. You can work on it, and you don't have to. You don't need a big blocking transport anymore. Okay, so just past fastly. Okay, this is a standard generic payload. So as you can see, it's typical for memory mapped buses. You have a notion of a command, which is it a read, is it a write, the address, the data pointer, etc. It's off-the-shelf generic purpose payload, but it's used to be specific to bus protocols. Okay, so here is a true notion of a function call with TLM. So you have with TLM LT, which is a blocking transport. So you have one transaction, which is just a function call. So you don't have to pass through the systemc kernel, so you don't need to synchronization. And you have the TLM80, which is more accurate, but you need at least 2 function calls, so at least 1 delta between both the forward pass and the backward pass. Okay, just to finish to TLM, for people who don't know TLM. So here is a more concrete example. So you have on the top left an initiator. So with in a bold the initiator socket. On the right top corner you have a target with a target socket. So as we can see in the constructor of the initiator, we bind the interface TLM backward and transport interface with the socket. We do the same with targets, and then we have in the top module. So the top module will instantiate your module. So in this case, the top instantiates the initiator and the target. And then at the last line, we can see we bind the initiator socket with the target socket, meaning we are interconnecting both modules. If you let some sockets unbinded, you can start the simulation. You have to bind all ports. systemc doesn't allow to, by default, to run a simulation without binding all ports. Okay, cool. So we have systemc. We can easily model hardware at RTL level if you want. We have TLM, so we can abstract some parts. We can mix both if you want. You can use systemc and TLM in the same simulation. Okay, so you could theoretically build a CPU model with systemc, but it could be slow. You could build a systemc model with TLM, which is, I think, a better solution. So now I will talk more about what we call a virtual platforms. And I will take an example. So let's imagine I want to build this SOC. So just an example, just a Cortex M3 with a memory, UART, timer, okay, just basic IP, an SPI, GPIO, and watchdog. And I want to be able to simulate it. And in order to have an interaction with the virtual platform, I want a backend to have to be able to exchange data through the UART. So why do we need that? So here is a typical V process. So if you imagine we don't have virtual platforms, so you will have a conception, architecture, design, and then you have what we call the implementation or the integration. And you cross the fingers, the software will run on the hardware as you expected. In case it's not, then you have to do the loop back and you have to redo the conception, to refine the architecture and the design. With virtual platform, you can, in parallel of designing your hardware, you can give a virtual platform directly to your software team. Sorry, so they can, while you are designing and refining your hardware, you can allow your software to directly run on the virtual platform without having the real hardware. Why? The problem is the prototype takes time, takes money, and most of the time is time consuming. You don't want to reduce a lot your real hardware because it costs a lot. And most of the time the result is really fragile and expensive. So you really want to avoid that. That's why we have a virtual platform. So what about where is a virtual platform in different abstractions? So we have on the bottom the real hardware, so it's your final hardware, where you will run your full binary on your final hardware, so your application, maybe with an OS or not. Then you have the emulation part, where you will run also your final execution on real platform, but in this case it's FPGA, it's not really the real hardware. With virtual platform, you also run the fully binary, meaning it's the same binary you will run on your real hardware, except you run it on something totally virtual. It's just model, just software. And on top, you have an algorithm execution but it's not execution on a real hardware. The key is to have a better interaction between your software and your hardware team. As systemc is a standard and it's an open standard, the idea is to have a better model reuse. So if you want to do exploration with your software team, you can easily reuse your model. You can investigate new architecture, okay, with an open source model, and if you have customer, you can improve your interaction. Okay, just to finish, so if you, on the top, it's the normal V process, so you build your hardware, then you want, at the time you can try to run your software, but it's integration point, which is critical, and you want to avoid any bad surprise when you run your software on it. So you want to decrease this time and try to avoid any risk. So with models, you are able to do continuous integration. So you can, for example, as the presentation yesterday with Jenkins, you could potentially run the software on your virtual platform. You could reduce risks and, of course, reduce time. Okay. So virtual platform are for early development, hardware, software verification. What we want, we also want to handle different abstraction level. Maybe you will integrate in your platform from another vendor giving you a model with at systemc RTL level. So you want to be able to mix different abstraction. You want your virtual platform to run fast. You don't want to wait 2 nights to have Linux booting on your virtual platform. You want to handle many core, many sockets. You want to support heterogeneous platforms because it's more and more the case. And homogeneous, of course. So how we do that? So I'll continue with my example. And how I model my, for example, the AP UART. So it's a Cortex-M AP UART. So how we did that at GreenSock? So we just took the datasheet. And the idea is to describe at TLM abstraction the architecture and the behavior of your model. So the modelization is based on a framework called GreenRag, which is an open source framework helping you to build a systemc register model. So here the first line of code is just an example. So you have the UART data register. So I just call create register. You have the name, the description, the address, the default value, and the write mask. So I do the same for integer baud rate register. So I describe like that all my register according to the existing datasheet. Of course, with RISC-V, as we have the source code, it's easier. And then I describe the behaviors. It means what happens when I write to the register. What when I write to this register, and what when I read this register. So here is what happens when you write to the data register. So GreenRag introduced a notion of callbacks. It means you can have a pre-write or a post-write callbacks. So each time you write or you pre-write or you post-write, you can call a function. You have a notion of pre-read too. So we did a callback on the data register. So each time an initiator will write to this register, it will run this function. So what I do is that just I read the register at 0. I take the 2 first bytes. And then I start a new TLM transaction to send the data which has been written in the data register, and then send back to the backend. As I send the data to the backend, so the backend can directly get the UART data. And then at the end, I update the status of the interruption. Okay, cool. So I can build like that all my modules. But what about the interconnection? Okay, so I will use what we call a TLM router. So TLM router will reproduce the memory map you have on your system on chip. So basically, you will take all your IP, you will instantiate them, and you will bind them to your interconnect, so including your CPU. So the issue with the current standard, you don't have any standard way to say, oh, okay, this IP will go to address 0 DB for 0000. So currently we use something called GreenConfig, which is also an open source configuration framework, allowing you to say, okay, this IP go to this part of the memory map, and we use the same mechanism for all IP. But you need to know a new standard is coming, presented at DVCon next in 10 days, which is CCI. So it's a configuration, control, and inspection standard provided by Axelera, the same for which is also behind systemc VHDL. So we will have standard parameter for each IP, so we can, in a standard way, parameterize how IP are on the memory map. Okay, so we have our IP, now we need our CPU. You don't want to reinvent the wheel. Okay, maybe some people know QEMU. So QEMU is a powerful open source emulator. So QEMU for Quick Emulator. So it includes a generic machine emulator based on JIT. So basically it includes a lot of CPU models. So ARM, PPC, MIPS, x86, and there is a fork for RISC-V. It also includes some IP, so you can directly run your software on it. But interfaces are not standard, meaning they are not using systemc standard. It's officially maintained by the community. It includes company like ARM, and it's one of the gatekeepers. There is a lot of contributors and a lot of commits, so it's a good source to use for our ISS in our virtual platforms. So the question, how do we bridge QEMU with systemc? Okay, so on one hand, we have systemc CPU model. You can buy them, but it costs a lot, and we don't want to lose our money. Most of the time, it's not really relevant. It's closed source. And on the other hand, we have QEMU, which is generic, free, and open source. So our proposed solution at GreenSox is to bridge QEMU with systemc, meaning we will include QEMU in a systemc model to see QEMU as a standard systemc model that you can easily bind and include in your virtual platforms. So we want to be able to allow existing model to enable execution of software binary and, of course, early platform development. So what about the requirements for systemc and QEMU? We want to connect standard systemc modules with QEMU. We want fast emulation. We want heterogeneous systems. We want multi-thread supports. So you need to know today in QEMU, if you want to run, for example, 4 virtual CPU, they will run on one thread, each one after the other. I will talk about that later, but we did an implementation called MTTCG, allowing running each virtual CPU on one different host thread. And of course, we want to support virtual platform, because maybe you want to test the integration of multiple SOC, for example, for IoT, in a more complex environment to test your security, your software. Up to you. Okay, so we have a solution. So it's open source. It's called QBox, for QEMU in a box. The idea is to wrap QEMU in a TLM2.0 API-like interface. Why like? Because QEMU is written in C. systemc is a C++ based language. So we have something called TLM2C doing the bridge between QEMU and systemc. So what's QBox? So QBox is provided as a different bundle of CPU. So you have, for example, the QBox for the ARM926, for the Cortex-A9, for the x86. So it's a child library. So you can that you can easily add to your existing virtual platform, to your system-C simulation. You can easily interconnect directly to your TLM 2.0 router. So you don't have to handle the part of time synchronization, the synchronization of data, as QEMU uses on base of time. So now I go back on Quantum. So what's Quantum? So we want a fast virtual platform. So we would like to have the ISS, so in this case it's QEMU, running in its own thread. We want systemc running in another thread. Okay, cool. But what about synchronization between QEMU and systemc? QEMU uses its own notion of time, its own base of time. systemc uses another base of time. TLM introduced what we call a quantum, allowing modules to run ahead of time. So you specify yourself the maximum time you allow a model to run ahead of time. So let's take an example. So you want a quantum of 10 nanoseconds, meaning you don't want each model to run ahead of 10 nanoseconds of systemc simulation time. So you have one initiator, which is, in our case, for example, a CPU. So the CPU will run in its own thread. Okay, it will run transaction. Okay, then it will go to 10 nanoseconds, which is its local time. And it will say, okay, stop. I need to wait systemc to move to 10 nanosecond time. In parallel, maybe the initiator 2 was already running in another thread, and it did the same. Okay, so when all models wait for 10 nanoseconds, the systemc time will move, and then the all initiator can continue to run. In the same. Okay. So what if the quantum is too big? And what's the best value of quantum? So I will go back on it with a concrete example of Linux booting on virtual platform. But typically, if the quantum is too big, you can squash. So some event can be squashed. So you are missing some information, and you can potentially slow down your models. On the other hand, if your quantum is too small, it means you will have a lot of synchronization with systemc kernel. So you will also slow down the simulation. So you have to find the best value, depending if you want more accuracy, if you want more speed, depending on your requirements. So here is a platform. So we have our Cortex M3 embedded in our QBox, so which is a child library that we interconnect through TLM2C to our memory map. Our memory map is a TLM 2.0 router. We have all our IP. We have the TCP serial, which is a backend. You can easily interconnect. It's just a TCP IP connection. So all of these components are open source. You can easily get the complete virtual platform on our Forge. And of course, we could do the same for a Raspberry Pi, a smartphone. Okay, so here is the quantum impact on the Linux boot. It's not the same platform as before. In this case, it's 4 Cortex A9. So as we can see, there is a bathtub, what we call the bathtub, with a minimum and maximum. If the quantum is too small, we can see the time to boot the platform is bigger, and the same if the quantum is too big. We found the minimum value of boot time happens when the quantum value is equals to the clock period of your Linux operating system. So it means you have interruption in sync with your quantum value. Yes.
You can actually get erroneous behavior because you've lost the ordering of events.
Exactly. Yes, I totally agree.
It's far worse than just going too slow.
Yes, I totally agree. Yes, you can lose events. So in that case, you will, for example, lose interruption, and you will slow down the boot of your guest system. So what about I/O between Qbox and your virtual platform? So just an example. So you have the Qbox thread, the systemc thread. So both are running, and Qbox want to run an I/O. For example, just a write to the UART data register. So on I/O, Qbox stop its execution. Yes, this is due to systemc nature, because systemc is single-threaded. It's not thread safe. So we stop. We take the transaction. We stop Qbox execution. Then systemc in this case is running. So systemc gets the event, runs the I/O, sorry, and get back the transaction to Qbox. So Qbox can continue to run after the transaction. So it's what happens for each transaction between Qbox and the systemc world. Just an idea for future works. The idea to maybe we have some parts in our model which are thread safe. So if we could inform Qbox, okay, this part is thread safe, you don't need to stop your thread. So we could avoid this stop of systemc thread between Qbox and systemc. Oops. Okay, so historically, QEMU has run all virtual CPU in one thread. So as I said earlier, if you want to use QEMU with, for example, 4 Cortex-A9, and you will run your platform, it will use only one thread for CPU. It uses also other threads for I/O, etc. But it means it will serialize the execution of different virtual CPU. So it's not really optimal for multi-core targets, and the idea is to run each virtual CPU on its own thread. So it's the idea of the MTTCG project, Multiple Thread TCG. TCG is a tiny code part, which is an intermediate code you have between your guest CPU and your host CPU. And the idea is to allow to have something multi-thread, so to run each virtual CPU in its own host thread. So it's something we started in 2014. We have demo working with Cortex-A9. If people want, I can give them a demonstration. So it gives all mechanism to protect multiple thread, to protect TCG cache, hierarchy, the consistency of L1, L2, to prevent the multiple TCG passes on the silicon. So it's basically what adds MTTCG, so it's open source. It's something we already sent to QEMU community. And it's currently under review in the QEMU community. Okay, so it's mostly about scientific contribution. Sorry for the time. Okay, so just to give you some results between the virtual platforms and the real hardware. So it's a 4 Cortex-A9 platform. I updated the DTB file to only have the CPU, the system controller, the JIC, the timer, and the UART. So you have the same in the real hardware and the virtual platform. And I did 2 tests, the Driston and the Linux boot time. So here is what we have. So in green, the QEMU, Qbox in blue. So meaning in green, you have all the platform in QEMU, Qbox with systemc models, and yellow, yes, the real hardware. So you can see it's not so slow, maybe just 3 times slower between the real hardware and the real platforms. So it takes just a few seconds to boot the Linux on the virtual platforms. And then here are some results with MTTCG, with QEMU, so where you run 4 Cortex-A9 in your virtual platform. So as we can see, if we use QEMU, we can see each time we add a new Driston. So Driston is a benchmark, CPU benchmark. The time increase as the execution is serialized. And with MTTCG, we can see it also increased, but really less than before. Okay, so just to conclude on Qbox, so Qbox is released under GPL v2 as QEMU. It's TLM 2.0 standard, compliant with industry. It's suitable for architecture, platform development, test, debug. So please join the community. Just to finish, I will give you just an industrial example, and of course parallel MP virtual platforms. So I can give you the name of the customer, but here's the success story. So it's a platform mixing different architecture. So we have TUAZIP and the Cortex M3 CPU. The virtual platform was developed in parallel of real hardware, so they was doing their VHL, RTL in parallel. So it was used for exploration, debug, and their software development, because initially they didn't know exactly what they wanted in their platform. It's multiple threaded, one thread for Qbox I/O, for the CPU core, one for systemc, so it's fast. It's mixing different abstraction level, TLM, systemc. You can tune the quantum between performance and communication accuracy. Yes, right. And we just have some interoperability issue, because the big issue we have today, and it's the aim of my thesis, is if you want to interconnect, for example, this platform with another platform, and you want to interconnect two platforms, for example, with the UART, SPI, I2C, you don't have a standard generic payload for the UART, for the SPI, for the I2C. So it's something we are trying to standardize, to have an open standard, to be able to bridge easily virtual platform between themselves without to build a bridge between all. Okay, and just to give you an overview of IMP virtual platform, so I can give you all details because there is a paper under review, but I did a modification of the systemc kernel to add a new API allowing you to have multiple ISS running in parallel of different systemc, so you can run each systemc on its own thread, on different machine, on different cluster if you want. So you can have something really fast. You can easily simulate multiple virtual platforms, see what happens with the communication between multiple virtual platforms. And what next with systemc? So there is also something called systemc IMS, so adding analog mixed signal system. So if someone wants to mix analog part and numeric part in their own simulation, the systemc implementation from Axelera is moving the license to Apache 2. The systemc 2.3.2 release is coming, adding systemc hierarchical LPE. The release should be the end of the year. And the CCI standard is happening, a public release before the end of the year, and a tutorial in 10 days. Okay, so just to conclude, so systemc will release a standard for modelization. It's an open standard. You can do your own implementation. QEMU is a go-to CPU emulator. You don't want to reinvent the wheel. You don't want to reinvent ISS. Qbox, which best of two worlds, is multi-threaded for high-speed multi-core platform. So please join, please contribute, and thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much. So, do we have some questions? I have one, and it's a very controversial thing, maybe. I think you strongly disagree, but my impression is that system C is not there where it wanted to be, actually. So you say it's a standard language used to model. I don't disagree, but I don't have the impression that it has like this penetration of the communities that it hoped to have like 10 years ago. I somehow like, whenever I look at system C, for me it's like it's still there and not like, oh yeah, this is the standard everybody wants to adhere to, right? So there's like Gem5, which is like more used for architectural explorations and stuff like this, right? So what's your impression there?
Okay, so my personal impression is that, okay, yes, systemc is not really fast because it's single-threaded. I think it's why people say systemc is slow. Maybe it's because it's why people don't like systemc. But systemc is not just an execution, it's not just a simulation kernel, it's also a standard for interfaces. meaning if you want to exchange model with with the community, and if you use System C port, System C standard port, you can easily interconnect your different models. You need to know at System C Evolution Day, so in May, there was a presentation about System C parallelization to speed up the execution. So I can't remember the name of the presenter, but he said, okay, yes, we have an issue. Clearly in the System C standard, not the implementation, it's clearly mentioned you need to single-threaded your execution of different process. It explained all difficult part to have something parallel in System C. And he concluded saying, okay, if System C continue like that, System C will become a dinosaur, which I totally agree. I think System C needs to move to something more modern with C++11, for example, with Lambda, something more parallel. I think it's a research activity. There's a lot of paper on that. So yes, there is good, there is bad with System C, but I think System C has to move for the next coming year.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to say I have to leave now, and I would like to thank you all for coming to the conference, and we're really happy to have you here, and I really, really hope to see you next year. And we had a great time, 3 days of great talks and conversations in the hallways and great food, and I'm very happy with this. Thank you.
So sorry, it's just a few people that need to catch their flight, so we can continue with questions. So it wasn't like the end of the conference, just Olaf leaving, wanted to say goodbye. Bye, Olaf. Speak to you soon. So, we had a question here, too.
I just wondered whether you could intermix TLM level modules from System C with gate level or RTL level models from Verilator in the same simulation. Would that make it more flexible?
Yes, I did that last year at DVCon. I did a demonstration. So mixing the Cortex-A9 platform, I took directly a VHDL code. I used, it was just an NAND gate, simple module. I took Verilator. So I converted my VHDL to System C because Verilator includes a converter from VHDL to System C. So it was RTL level. I included that to my memory map. So I have my first register with my entry of my NAND gate, the second entry, and the output. Then I wrote a driver with Linux to directly communicate with the NAND gate. And so the platform was mixing TLM and RTL level. And it was working, so I was able to communicate from my Linux OS directly with my virtual NAND gate.
But if you were able to, for example, convert an entire UART, APB UART from Verilog to Verilator C automatically generated, that you wouldn't need special drivers, you could just use the exact same software, which I think would be more valuable than having to write a special driver.
Sorry, I didn't get you.
The idea would be that you keep software compatibility because nobody wants to be rewriting their drivers the whole time.
Yes.
And say convert an entire APB UART written in Verilog using Verilator to a C model, which you then interface with your circuitry.
Okay, so you mean, okay, so you don't want to reinvent the wheel and rewrite existing AP? Is that your question? Oh.
I'm talking about wanting something to verify software, so the software should be the same without having different device drivers for the Verilog version and the C-level version.
Yes, okay, I see what you mean. Okay, yes, yes, with virtual platform, you don't change the software. The software is the same, you run on your real hardware and your virtual platform. So the driver is the same. Your model should know, so must have the same interface you have at RTL level or at TLM level. So, for example, the driver software guy must be able to write drivers with TLM as RTL with the same code.
Okay, maybe you can continue offline because we're running out of time and many people are like in a hurry now, it seems. So thank you very much again.
Thank you.